So based on what you said, if I have cancer, is there any benefit to me actually knowing that?
It depends on if you do a regular cleansing, a regular taking a break. See, stress is something, I'm considered the world leading expert for stress reduction and stress-related illness. Stress is something like you would move your hand over the edge of a table like this. And you move it for a minute, it doesn't really matter. You move it for an hour, you get really, really hurt. And you move it for 5 hours, your hand is permanently damaged, right? But if you do this and take a break, you do this and take a break, there's no permanent damage. You can do this for the rest of your life. The same happens with our health. That's what vacation is for. That is what taking a break, that's what putting in a fast, that's what detoxification is for. This is what healthy eating, juicing, or supplementation is for. If you live the right lifestyle, then you have absolutely no problems to ever developing anything that would be a permanent threat to your life. It's not possible. Cancer, for example, is not inherited. There is absolutely no cancerous gene that will cause cancer. We figured out that the same people in the same family develop the same form of cancer because they learn from the mother and grandmother or grandfather how they deal with stress, how they eat, how they drink, and how they deal with their life in general. Because adopted children have the tendency to get so-called inherited diseases if they don't know that they're adopted. So how does that happen? You know, there's definitely no gene. If you imagine that everybody in my entire heritage had cancer, everybody. You know, all 7 siblings of my mom, my father, I mean, everybody, grandmother, grandfather on both sides. I don't have cancer. My sister doesn't have cancer. My mom doesn't have cancer anymore. My brother doesn't have cancer. So if there is a cancer gene, believe me, I would have had cancer. And I don't have cancer, and I will never get cancer. So if you live the right lifestyle, it doesn't matter what they tell you. If they tell you you have cancer, first of all, so many positives are false positives. So they come back and scare this poor woman to death. It's just the calcium deposit. It's just some, or we saw something. First of all, Scott, breast cancer takes 7 to 10 years to grow to a size that you can even diagnose it, that you can even find it. And now they're going to scare this poor woman into instant surgery. Your life is at risk. And if the woman is smart and says, no, let me get educated first, they go to the relatives and say, your wife is so irresponsible. And can she do this to you or to your children and so on? And then they put the pressure on all sides and scare these poor people into surgery. Very often just for a calcium deposit, but very often just for an inflamed or infected lymph node, which could be easily fixed if you just buy a rebounder, a little trampoline, and do 7 minutes on it a day, and that gives you the best lymph drainage after a manual lymph drainage, which is not really available in America, I guess. But if you flush your lymph system in the right way, if you do some aerobic exercise, if you breathe right, like that's why I invented the breathing technique CDs for people to do it at home, because a really deep stomach breathing helps more for the lymph system than any kind of anaerobe exercise you can ever come up with. And people just have the tendency in the Western world to just breathe up here into the chest where there are no air bubbles. Because the main part are really in the tip of the lungs, and if you don't breathe down there, you don't get any oxygen. Just barely surviving. You just get enough to barely survive. And oxygen, as I talked about, is just the basic element for health. But there is no, to answer your question, in my opinion, any form of benefit. The opposite is true. Early detection usually leads to early treatment, very often unnecessary treatment. The medical profession as a cancer cure rate, as stated by Dr. Gary Null, Dr. Simoncini, and so on, of 2%. Dr. Null and his colleagues made a study proving that the medical industry is basically the #1 cause of death in America. So we all need to look at the facts, not at what they try to tell us. Then they tell us, oh, if we would have found this 6 months earlier, we could have saved the person. Yeah, of course, as a person is dead, I can tell you, oh, if I would have just spoken to him 5 minutes before he died, I could have saved him. It's the same absurdity. How can you go back and prove that? after a patient is dead, you can always say, oh, of course we could have saved him. But if they could, why didn't they save Patrick Swayze, Farrah Fawcett? Because they would have had the main people that everybody looked at in public in recognition, in the recognition world, recognition factor. They would look at these people and say, wow, the medical profession really cured these people. And they had all the money on earth. So if they had a cure, they would have cured them. And I'm really sad to say, and I hope he doesn't hear that before it happens, but Michael Douglas, for example, has, in my opinion, not the slightest chance to survive the next 2 years. They parade him as cured. Just let's see what happens the next 2 years.